But the thing that gave me goosebumps about that was nothing that I did, is what she said, and what her observation of me as a man, as a father, as a husband was, I miss that smile. You've been dead too long. Welcome back to life.
All right, guys. Hey, on this mastery journey, one of the greatest tools that we can develop is awareness, self-awareness and situational awareness, just awareness in general. And then from that perspective, what can we start to do about it? What tools can we apply? What can we learn? How can we use that awareness to get better a little bit every single day? Well, one of the things that many of us become aware of is that for a lot of men, asking for help is one of the hardest things we can do. There's also a survival mechanism out there where we tend to compartmentalize dramas and traumas and pain and experiences. Again, survival mechanism. So sometimes it is needed in the moment, in the period of time, but then we're not so good at releasing it, at unpacking it, at healing from it, of down regulating from it. With that awareness, and with the awareness that asking for help is one of the hardest things we can do, flip it around. One of the best ways we can deal with it is transparency, is communication, is bonding with others, to have those conversations, to be able to help and ask for help. Well, I say all this because today's guest is a very special guy and a special friend of mine, Keith Schmidt. He's lived a life of service from the Navy to the fire department. And now he's also out there as a speaker and a coach, just really wanting to bring his own story to people authentically and super transparently, from abuse as a child, sexual abuse as a young man, which happens to too many people, but certainly a lot of men and is never discussed, to where we met at the MDK Project Men's Crucible event last year, where Keith was headed to such a dark place, down a spiral, down a path with himself, with his family, that when we finished the event, he had found that spark, the rebirth, I think he calls it, this energy for life and his family and those around him again, that, as he mentions in this episode, when we got our phones back at the end of the event, his wife Heather had a text there waiting for him with a picture she had snapped from social media during the event, where she says something along the lines of, I missed that smile. It's great to have you back again, Keith. I love you. Right. So super powerful transformation or turn on his path that he took. And one of the things, again, that's so special about Keith is his willingness to go out and just tell his own story so authentically and so honestly, in the interest, not of just sharing about himself, but obviously in service, as he's done his whole life, to touch somebody else who may struggle with something similar or know someone, and open that door for them to have a similar conversation, for them to be honest, for them to maybe ask for help, or just bring awareness to it. So honored to bring you this conversation today with Keith Schmidt. Let's jump into it. All right, we're recording, we're off and running. I've got this savage servant here today, Keith Schmidt, or as our friend Alan Medrano said to me the other day, he's not a savage, he's a man of honor. I totally believe that. I'm excited to introduce Keith to you guys today. Keith is a Navy veteran, where he was a rescue swimmer. He is a lieutenant currently in the fire service. He's a firefighter medic, and a whole bunch of other stuff, including husband, father to two lovely young girls, and a great friend of mine, a brother from the MDK Project Class 08. Keith, it's so good to talk to you, my friend.
It is absolutely wonderful to be on your show with you, Michael. Yeah, so I'm just feeling goosebumps from that introduction. That's over and beyond.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to chatting today. It's been a while since we caught up, but certainly a chance to do it on air and share some of what I know about you as a very special man and human being with the audience here. And we talked a little bit off air. It's your first podcast ever. I'm honored to get you on here and get this side of your career going. We'll talk about that. But man, let's just let's dig right in. Do you want to introduce more about yourself and your history, or shall we just jump right in?
Yeah, well, real quick, you kind of covered it. I joined the Navy. I joined the U.S. Navy right out of high school. My intention was, at the time, I was actually doing volunteer firefighting while I was in high school, and my intention was to become a firefighter in the Navy. and I found out everybody was a fireman in the Navy. I did hold the rate of DC, damage control, so it was a little more specialty, but still, it wasn't what I was expecting. So I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to say, so I went into the challenge program for the SAR swimmer program. Um, past that, we started actually with 125 guys, graduated with 21. So yeah, fun times. Yeah.
How long were you in
Um,
the Navy?
4 years.
4 years. Okay.
Yeah. So from 92 to 96. And then kind of that transition from military life to civilian life. And that was kind of a challenge, just because you're used to that whole, you're going to be here at this specific time, you got this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to, wow, okay, now I'm responsible. But so went out, found a firefighting contract job after that, down in the Antarctic. And that's actually incidentally where I met my wife, Heather.
Lot of fires there amongst the ice
No,
and snow.
no, it's low volume, very high risk, because everything is modular. We were there for the aircraft support. I got to do a bunch of cool stuff. Got to go on a bunch of just some wild times down there. It's the best way I could describe it, because you just don't get to do that here on the North American continent.
Awesome. Yeah, I never knew that you were down there. So this is what I love about these kind of conversations. Stuff comes out that's just super interesting.
After that, found my way. Actually, fast forward 1998, met Heather down there in Antarctica, came to Indiana, where I currently live in Noblesville, Indiana. It's on the north side of Indianapolis. And in 2001, was hired by the Indianapolis Airport Fire Department, had been working for them since. Before that, let me backtrack a little bit. I was on Wayne Township Fire Department as a part-time firefighter. So I was always keeping myself busy, always keeping myself challenged. And then fast forward to present day, I have two daughters, Alana, who is 12, going on 18, at least that's what it feels like. And then I have McKenna, who's 8. And I am just absolutely blessed to have the family I have.
12 and 8, three lovely women in the house there. You're a lucky man.
Yeah, the only other testosterone around here is my dog, Bentley. He's a Siberian Husky. So it kind of helps balance things, I guess.
Yeah. So, and then, the two guys sleeping in the doghouse. I see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. So I never knew about Antarctica. It's got to be one of those crazy things when you and Heather get the question, where did you guys meet? And you say Antarctica, people probably just think you're blowing them off, or you're being.
You usually get the eyebrow raised, like, "Oh, really?"
That's pretty crazy. And then, so 20 plus years now in the fire service. Did you join 2001 pre 9/11 or post?
Yes, actually, I was probably only in my 3rd or 4th month, because I joined in May 2001. Okay. So actually, no, a little more than 3 or 4 months. But yeah, I was actually working that day when it happened.
Tell me about that.
That was kind of surreal at the same time, because I actually have friends, or actually, he's retired now, but he was currently, he was down there at Ground Zero when it happened. Fortunately, he was the ones who lived. Obviously, he's retired. But yeah, he was on Hazmat 1, and originally, we were getting reports, all kinds of reports, and I was trying to reach out for intel, and the initial report was he was killed in action, and I was like, okay. And then found out later on that wasn't true. So there was a lot of moving parts going on with that. But I'll never forget, I was standing in the kitchen and turned, morning news, coffee at the firehouse, and looking at the TV and watching a plane go into the towers. And I was like, holy shit. we are under attack. I didn't think it was an accident because you don't fly a jetliner into. There was no way it was an accident. I knew immediately what was going on. And so from there on, we just progressed through the years.
Yeah, crazy day. And I think, for like my son or your daughters, it's hard to describe
Yeah,
seeing and experiencing something like that and what it feels like and what it feels like in the moments and hours and days after. And then it's shifted the world. Obviously,
it
it
did
changed the
in
course of
many ways.
history in so many ways. Probably a lot of ways that are devastating and not so positive. But certainly there are positives too. One of the things that really strikes me in my memory about that day and that time was, the skies were empty, right? Planes were grounded. The streets were largely empty. People were kind of sheltering in place. We didn't know if other buildings and other cities would be going through the same thing.
Right.
And there was just this spirit of, with people I was with, I don't know, generally I say people out there amongst each other,
Hmm.
whether they were in a building or whether they encountered each other in their cars in the street, there was a lot more of a spirit of solidarity and wanting to help their fellow human and
Sure. Yeah.
come together in a struggle,
Yeah.
which I reflect back on that, especially at that time of year, but now in general, because we're so divided as a country, it feels like we're so far apart from that human connection right now.
Yeah. And that's disappointing. I mean, that's a whole nother topic on hand to dive into why we are that way. But um, yeah, it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate.
Well, let me ask this about the fire service. I got to ask it. I've asked you before personally, and I'm sure
Sure.
my buddy Trevor's going to listen to this. So he says you only work fire at the airport when you're being punished for something. What'd you do wrong?
Yeah, I've heard that so many times, and no, it's actually it's you have to look at it. I look at it as actually a speciality. Just you have a no different than a doctor. You have a general practitioner, and then you have specialty doctors, neurosurgeons. Now, I'm not saying air, aircraft firefighting is neurosurgery by any means, um, but it is a specialty because there are a lot of hazards that you typically don't have to deal with on a structure fire. I've been on hundreds and hundreds of resident fires, building fires, and we still deal with. We're no different than any other department. We just have the aircrafts to deal with as well.
How frequently do you deal with aircraft fires?
Uh, Aircraft emergencies or aircraft fires?
Well, let's cover both. Are these medical
Aircraft
emergencies mostly?
emergencies, they happen more often than you think, but typically it's because the pilots have a crew resource management system they have to go through. So if this light goes off, they have to declare an emergency. It may be a sensor, but they still have to go through the process. So that's where they notify who they have to notify. They notify us. We get set up. Typically, they'll land, no problem. Fall into parking if needed. There are the occasions where we are seeing where the pilot says, "Okay, we have smoke in the cabin." They land, they evacuate the aircraft, take care of it, mitigate what we need to mitigate, and go from there.
Got it. And how often do you deal with medical? So I think I told you my story.
Mhm.
I've flown so much that I'm sure there's always been like, hey, ding, is there somebody on board? But only once where we had to emergency land because there was a person having a very serious medical problem,
Right.
and they attended to him as much as they could, the crew in flight, and then we landed and he was taken off, and don't think he made it. Not even sure that he made it to the
Right.
landing. Although I was talking to somebody who says, airlines and aircraft don't like that paperwork
They
and
don't.
the imposition on the other passengers. So oftentimes, if there's a death, it's happened on the ground in the ambulance. But how often does that happen? And what I often wonder, just as a traveler, is how much equipment and training is on board with the crew.
So the crew, the crew itself aren't trained to handle. They're handled to train. maybe CPR, but they're not. They're trained for CPR, AED, automatic external defibrillators.
Okay.
So they have that part. But as far as medically diagnosing, they're not trained for that. So that's why they rely on, you hear that ding, is there a medical professional on board? And it happens quite often. I've been on, again, hundreds of aircraft coming on board, taking over from whoever. It's usually typically a nurse practitioner. Sometimes we get an ER doc if we're lucky. But the resources they have, it depends on the airlines. Now, I'm not going to say which airlines carry which, but some of the airlines have pretty good medical bags. And it's kind of actually, in a way, kind of scary. I'm like, wow, you're entrusting somebody, you have no idea their credentials, you no idea, and they can access this bag, and they have all these, you have IVs, you have, at one point they were carrying more medication than we were. I was like,
that's pretty interesting. So that's not necessarily for a flight attendant. That would be if there were like an EMT or a doc or somebody on board
or
who
a medic like myself
could make use of that to benefit somebody. Well, it's
Yeah.
good to know that they've at least got. So I just did a basic life-saving class certification recently of CPR and AED, and you know what it is, right? And then going through it is fantastic. You need to find ways to keep up with it and get the family into it. But just the AED element of it and learning that for myself, somebody who's not trained in this, the difference between like a blockage, a heart attack, and this electrical malfunction of the system of the heart, that you need the AED, the paddles like you see on TV to kickstart it. And you see them all over the place in airports and schools and stuff now, but how many people in the walk around public actually know how to use it if they had to? I think about it with my son as a student athlete,
right?
Out at you're out of a field 30 plus soccer fields away from help. Who's got that equipment and training out there?
Yeah, I can actually say within the past 10 years, it has become a really focus to have those AEDs out there, and the general public are a lot more aware of them now, and they're very user friendly.
Yeah,
and they're not going to do any harm. Which I'm saying is, it's not like the movies. We had this discussion with a certain government agency. They were afraid that people were going to take them and basically have their way with security. And it's like, that's not how they work. They only shock if there's actually the rhythms are only going to shock. It's going to be ventricular tachycardia and ventricular fib or VFib. And just think of basically VFib is like a bowl, your heart is like a bowl of jello. It's just shaking there. It's not really doing much. And then the VTAC is just going, it's completely out of control. And it's not developing anything that the body can sustain. That's the easiest way. That's the layman's term.
No, that helps. That helps me a ton to understand how it's like, what it's dealing with and what it's bringing back.
There's diagrams for firefighters that we put this here and that there.
Yeah.
And push the analyze button. Once you open that case, it tells you exactly what to do.
Yeah, voice controls and everything. It's pretty cool.
And it will tell you no shock advised or shock advised.
Continue CPR.
Yep, it'll tell you all that.
I think it's even got your some of them will have your pace of your compressions showing
up
a little.
It just depends on the brands, and it's like anything else. There's multitude of brands out there, and go from there.
Yeah, really cool stuff. And the gravity of it hit me when I was signing my son up for the new soccer season, signing all the waivers. And one of them said the leading cause of death in children, I think, is sudden cardiac arrest.
Yeah, but yes, but no. I'm going to challenge you on that one a little bit, because with pediatrics, it's typically respiratory. Something in the respiratory drive has gone awry, and the cardiac arrest is a byproduct of that.
Got it.
So just a little. There are the cases where it is a true, something has gone wrong with the heart.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Interesting. That's what showed up on the waiver, but that's just interesting to think about, especially as athletes are out there and we got kids with asthma, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this, man. You stay super busy. I know how important your Heather, your wife, and your daughters are to you, your family,
Yeah.
your extended family, right? The rest of your family.
Hmm.
But the job you've got is extremely demanding. I think you work 24-hour shifts.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, the guys I know, they'll be on 24-hour shifts day after day.
Hmm.
So how do you shift gears like that? How do you make sure you're spending enough of the right time with the family and focus on being present when you do have that time?
Well, that's the challenge. And unfortunately, you have to really get your, it's because it's really hard to shut it off, especially after like a crappy shift. But that's where resource management these days for us now, it's actually becoming more prevalent than ever. Thankfully, we're talking about it. Um, I know everyone says the veteran suicide rate is through the roof, and it absolutely is. And it just saddens my heart. But so is the first responder suicide rate is ticking upwards, and that's and now we're having programs where we're actually having mental health accessibility uh, to help guide that, to give you the tools to so you're able to decompress. Because let's face it, when we show up, it's not a good day for anyone. I mean, we joke aside, yeah, yeah, we want that big, burning building and go in and be the hero, all that good stuff. But we know the the public is wanting us to show up physically ready, mentally ready, and ready to go. And unfortunately, they don't get a choice of the A crew and the versus the B crew. You get what you get when you call 911. So, but it's my like I take it personally as a responsibility is making sure, okay, if when we're downrange, when I call downrange, we're on the station and we're calls. I was like, is there anything personally going on with my guys? Is there, because that's going to affect your thinking. If the guys are thinking, well, I can't even pay my mortgage, and they're thinking of that on the scene, or their marriage is, gone to shit, that can affect a lot of things. And that's again, so I know it's a long answer to your question, but the simple answer is really step up and get the help you need to get. If you're struggling in the home front, reach out to your community that you're in and get the help you need to get. Yeah, my story. I had tons of PTSD. I was failing. I was starting to fail in every avenue, in the fitness, faith, the finances, all that stuff, and it was tearing me apart because I just felt isolated. I felt, to be honest, it was a big pity party at some point, but at the same time, I wasn't reaching out for the help. I was just suffering in silence, like you've heard that term. Uh, a lot of men suffer in silence, and it's true. So you compound that with a job like mine, where you have people out there, on a daily basis. I can be dealing with, more trauma than a person sees in their lifetime in one day. Just give you an example. One of my guys, first day on the job, the first day, we get a run for a head on car versus semi. The person was DOA, dead on arrival, but we had to cut her out. Um, that that was probably one of the hardest extrications I've ever been on. Um, but the whole time, like, we're so focused on the mission at hand, and then afterwards we come back. The very first thing I did, as I sat him down, I said, "Let's talk about this. I want to hear what your thoughts are." When I started, we didn't have any of that. It was shut up. You're a pussy if you cry. If this gets to you. So it's nice to see the community has started that shift. Finally, it's taken us a long time to get there, and I don't truly believe we're quite there yet, but it's definitely a lot better. So coming home, you know, come home, I shut things off. I've even got to the point where I've taken my work phone and gone, do not disturb, because I want to be in the moment with my kids. I want to be in the moment with my wife, whatever. And I really try to apply. Now I fail here and there, but I try to my best apply that every day. So when I'm in the gym, I'm in the gym. When I'm at dinner, we're at dinner. We don't have these. I hate it. It bugs the hell out of me when I'm sitting there out in restaurants and I see families doing this. You know, they're just so englamored in that. We have a standing rule in our house. You know, we're not perfect, but we have a standing rule in our house that phones are not allowed at the dinner table, period. We silence them. Even if we hear it buzzing, we don't go answer it. And if it's really an emergency, they'll call back. You know, you'll mitigate what you need to take care of. But it's so important to me to be in the moment. And that was the hardest thing for me to learn, was being in the moment, being present, and taking care of what I needed to do as a man, as a father, as a husband. Again, I'm a work in progress. I'm far from perfect, but I'm a lot better. I'm a lot further than I was a year and a half ago.
Right. Yeah, we'll talk about some of that. I
Yeah.
appreciate the leadership that you're taking, the role you're taking in setting a different culture than what you started with 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And some good tips there on just family time and turning off the addiction of the little blue screen
Yeah.
that we've been hooked to. So you said a lot in there. A couple things I want to touch on as far as this idea of suffering in silence, I think you said, or the lone wolf mentality of men. One, hard enough for men to learn to ask for help.
Yeah.
And understand that's not a weakness. It's actually a strength. But to be able to do that, oftentimes we got to get out of lone wolf mode and actually have a community from whom we seek help and communicate. Right. So I see guys that say like, oh, I'm at fault for not asking for help. Well, the fact that you're not even in touch at all doesn't position either of us to offer or ask for help. So there's that connection that's got to be formed and maintained.
Correct. And yeah, absolutely. And you have to make the effort on both yeah, again, yeah, it stems back to, we're programmed, right? As men from young age, we watch the movies. You know, society sees us as, you're a big tough guy. You know, when things, it's almost like break glass in case of emergency, and that's when you're allowed to be a man. And what people don't, I think, what the misconception is that's not the case at all, because being a man is being gentle. You know, for me, you know, being a man, being a beast is like opening the door for people. You know, just being a good human being. And the time needs, when I have to step into that gap, into that protector role, that's my role. But I've trained for it. There's caveats with that. You have to train for it, prepare for it, all that good stuff. But I don't walk around beating my chest. You know, I'm King Kong. In fact, I am just the opposite. I like to be kind of in the gray, the background, observing everything. But again, it's going to the point of at one point, 1 second I could be holding my daughter's hand, treating her like the woman she needs to be, girl she needs to be treated like. And the very next second, if something needs to be done, then I'm going to take action. So there's a balance. And I think it's John Lovell, like the Warrior Poet Society. I don't know him. I love what he does, but again, there's that balance. You have to have a warrior balance, a warrior poet balance. I love that. I absolutely love that. That resonated with me. So this whole thing, suffering in silence, going back to that, is we just have to break the mold. And fortunately with us men, we have to take that whole frame of a man and break it down to the foundation, completely rip out the foundation if needed, or if it just needs to be refilled, or whatever we need to do to rebuild that foundation and then build back up from there.
Yeah, we're running around with the wrong design
Right.
in a lot of cases. I mentioned on the lead-in, I think, to a recent podcast I did, this recognition that hit me, or somebody mentioned this thing recently to me, that there's research that you've done work like with down regulating your nervous system and all these kind of things, where we start to think about the monkey mind versus the reptilian mind, and
Right.
what systems are actually running our body and our mind, our holistic mind and our thinking. And they sit in different places. The point I'm getting to, or trying to get to here, is sort of your subconscious mind versus your conscious mind. And that we run most of the time on our subconscious mind. It's running our breath, our heart, our nervous system. It's also running most of the data awareness and interpretation and stuff going on around us. It's the supercomputer that lets our conscious mind focus on just one thing at a time.
Right.
The problem is that subconscious mind that runs like 99% of our life and our person wasn't programmed by us. Right? It was programmed in those first sort of 5 formative years of our lives. So we're actually not run by ourselves. We're run by somebody else,
right,
who programmed us.
Yes.
And so to the extent we're going to start to become aware of that and reprogram some of it, it does take a lot of work and oftentimes a lot of time.
Yeah, there's definitely, absolutely, you have to break the mold that the culture has built. It needs to be done. Sometimes some shit just needs to be blown up and rebuilt. They do it all the time in the world with buildings. Kind of out with the old, in with the new. You got this beautiful building now. Now, you, depending on the context, of that. And that's where I have really, I know I've shared this in the past with you before, and it still gives me goosebumps to this day, is when I got that text from my wife when we graduated and we got our phones back. And I was so excited to turned on my phone, and I was going to call Heather, and all of a sudden, the text messages just start rolling through. And she had been following us on Instagram. And she took a snapshot of me in the ice tub. You remember this, right? So there I was in the ice tub, smiling. And I was just, you couldn't hurt me. You couldn't do anything to me. In fact, I was stealing souls. I was just snatching souls with that. And but the thing that gave me goosebumps about that was nothing that I did, is what she said, and what her observation of me as a man, as a father, as a husband was, I miss that smile. You've been dead too long. Welcome back to life. I mean, whew.
Super powerful.
I mean, we don't see the outside observation when we're suffering in silence, because she had seen it, obviously. I mean, we were on a path that was not good, and I take responsibility for that. We were on a path where probably a year or so we would have been on separation, we would have been, yeah, would not have been good. You know, that disconnected father that I swore that I would never be, because that's what I came up with. My relationship with my father is 100% different now. It's a 180. But that's where I was heading. I was blowing up. I was like that teapot. Just the littlest things would just set me off. And I was like, okay, I got to do something, but I didn't know. And luckily, you know, however it happened, it just came into my life. You sent me it. And here I am a year and a half later. Now, again, I'm a work in progress. I'm not perfect, but man, I am a hell lot better than I was.
Yeah. Before we jump into that change of path, change of course, and that wake up call, take me back a little bit to, and I know you're saying you take full responsibility, but how did you end up in that place? Was it an accumulation of life? Was it learned behavior? You mentioned some of the ways your dad was as a father.
It was actually not being a man and dealing with actually, I was like, because well, let me phrase it. It was me being a man in the old frame, compartmentalize it, stuff it down, compartmentalize it, stuff it down, and then we're going to build another compartment when that compartment's full, until, you know, you absolutely have no room left. Now, so you can't unpack that all, you know, all at once, because what happens is you're just blowing up here and there and there. So it becomes very volatile, it becomes very toxic. It becomes passing the wound to your kids, because your kids are, well, this is how dad acts. Well, is that what I'm going to have for a husband when I grow up?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that, you know, is that how all men act? I'm like, I'm starting to see it, and it was just tearing me apart.
Yeah, for sure. We lost as a culture, certainly in this country, and I think in Western culture, we lost the rite of passage
Yeah.
concept for
Yeah.
young men,
Yeah.
and even for men. Those challenges and those communities, you know, whether it was men going out to war, whether it was going out for a hunt, whether it was, you know, whatever it is, it's we either lost it, or it became an unhealthy hunt.
Yeah.
Even finding the right tribe of guys for yourself. So you and I had this opportunity. We both stumbled into the universe provided the MDK project, and
Yes.
we're all different people, and we're all there for different reasons and different paths to continue to work on ourselves afterwards. But I think back to, you know, people know, so we'll only talk about what is sort of public domain. It's a
Sure.
75-hour crucible event for men.
Yep.
And people see the Instagrams and the Facebooks and the whatevers. And so it's, there's a hike, right? People see guys out on a hike. Well, we took a hike early on in the process. And well, first of all, we've talked a little bit about the physical fitness test for this thing. There are only, I think, 3 guys, including you, who have come in, there's a 75-minute limit, who've come in under the 75, but over 60 minutes, who then successfully completed the project.
Oh, wow.
Crucible event, right? Because it's sort of a general, like, if you can cross this bar physically, you should be able to finish. Well, we were out on that first hike, and the medics almost pulled you. They saw something.
I didn't.
Right.
I didn't even realize that until Ray came up to me and says, "Oh, thank God, you got your color back. We don't have to pull you." I was like, holy shit! Did I just get about rolled? You know, I had no idea, because my mindset was, I'm not quitting, but I didn't know how my body was actually physically acting, because I just had shut that part down.
Yeah. And if we fast forward, right, you were the honor man of our class, meaning the number 1 ranked person out of the guys who finished, 12 of us. 12 incredible guys, 11 other guys I'm honored to know and enjoy. And what that means is, so you happen to be number 1 ranked both amongst peers and by instructors, and so you were honored in some ways at our graduation dinner by that. But I look at you, you're the perfect guy for that role for me, as a leader in that role, because you weren't the guy that was just crushing everything physically.
No.
In fact, as you said, I brought that up because you almost medically got rolled from
Yeah.
the very beginning. Uh,
Right.
right. You were under the time limit for the physical test, but you almost had a medical thing that pulled you out of this thing in the first hours of the event. And
Right.
so it wasn't like you were setting the speed or running out ahead of the pack the whole time. And I've seen
No.
guys that graduate where the physical was never really a challenge for them, but the physical becomes a gateway to the
Right.
other development, right? So you were
Right.
the guy who was the heart of the class, and you're the guy out there stealing souls, eating ice and eating sand, right? So you became the, again, kind of, there's the body, but there's the mind and the spirit. You became the heart and the spirit of our class in such a meaningful way.
Wow. Yeah. I'm still, blown away by that to this day. So I absolutely am. But yeah, it's to me when I was, when we were there going through there, and to me, it's still to this day is about the guy to the right and left of me. I focus outward. I don't yes, I have internal stuff I want to focus on, but the reason I jumped into that sand pit, the reason because I was alive again. I came alive. In the moment, like when we heard that ocean, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to get into that water. I didn't care how cold, how warm, what size of waves it was. I wanted to get in there, and I was alive again. And there's actually a picture of me like interlocked like this. I was just like, "You are not going to break me." And the other guys were like, "Oh my god." I was like, "No, I got you," because it wasn't about me. It was about the guys on the left and right of me. I was like, "I got you." And you flip the script on that. Remember the sit-ups where we were doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And guess who was the last person to be able to get up? Yep, this guy right here, right? Because they're like, get up, get up. I'm like, for whatever reason, my legs were just like, okay. But we all worked together and we got up. So it's the strength and weaknesses, right?
Right.
We talk about that often, strength and weaknesses. So to me, that's where my focus is. I focus outwards.
Yeah, that's so the asking for help. You also got to be willing to accept help,
Yep, you,
right?
you do. You've got to put your ego in check. The ego is the worst thing that's going to get you in deep, deep, deep trouble, and you're not going to get out of it. And so, absolutely, I raise my hand. I'll shoot the flare, whatever I need to do. Say, hey guys, I need help. I need help with this. And again, that's the biggest thing in our society today. Again, we're making strides towards changing that dynamic. But guys asking for help from other guys or other women, just people in general, I need your help because uh, I can't do this on my own. Your pride, your ego gets in the way, and then because what's the priority? It's the mission, right? I want to get this done. Well, if I don't have the skill set, if I don't have the communication, if I don't have the whatever aspect it is to get the job done, then I need to out resource that and get it in and get that help. So my ego, um, screw it. Yeah. Do I screw up every once in a while still? Again, not perfect, right?
Yeah, far from it, all of us.
And I get called out on it, and I'm like, thank you, I deserve that, and learn from it and move on.
Yeah, that's one of the best things is having people who can call you out, bring that awareness. So any kind of immersive learning experience like this 75-hour MDK project, or there are other ways to go about similar wake up calls or revelations. I think it'd be harder for you and I to go do a 75-hour silence retreat.
Right.
But there are kind of the things that are obvious, and then there are the things that take a while to unpack. As you look, when you think back a year and a half to those 75 hours when we were in the event,
Right.
and we're challenged in different evolutions, not all of them physical, right? A lot of these things are
Right.
about leadership, a communication, a team, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
What do you look back on anything that stands out for you that you would do differently now? A lesson in terms of, it was just sinking in then, but it's something you might have done differently if you went back and did it again.
If I just to understand, the question is, would I do something different during the 75 hours?
Yeah, like I'll give you an example for myself that sits with me that, maybe this will trigger a thought if you have one. Is I mentioned your ranking at the end,
Right.
right? And so there are
Right.
different times that we had opportunities to give feedback and take
Right.
feedback from each other. And I look back on that and I think we were all way too kind to each other.
Yeah.
And this is something we need more of,
Yeah.
is constructive but deeper
Yeah.
honesty as
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. And yeah, that actually brings up a good point, because that's one of the things I wish I had been more strong in. I am a lot stronger in it now. I will not start the conversation saying, "Hey, you're awesome." Remember that? You're awesome, but you're really sucking. What kind of feedback is that?
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely go back, and but you have, again, that was a learning experience for me. I had been in a place on my own, kind of an isolation island, nobody really calling me out. I didn't have the confidence in myself, which I do now, to be able to have those lean into those tough conversations. Um, Respectfully, just this morning I had to have one of those conversations, and it was with a higher authority than me. But at the same time, I wasn't going to let it fly.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think about it as a parent. If you never had the tough conversations with your kids, if you just let
Yep.
them have what they always wanted, do what they always wanted, put no barriers on them, you're
Right.
not serving them. That's
No.
not love. That's not parenting. You have to set boundaries and communicate and give feedback.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. Um, if I need to be the bad guy, or viewed as the bad guy, I have to keep telling myself, okay, again, like the 75 hour we were in, not all the lessons were caught right there, but they're caught later on down the road.
Yeah. As
Like,
long as you
oh,
catch
that's
them.
why dad said this.
Yeah, exactly. A couple things I want to make sure we hit on.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I'll back into some of these. So preparation, you mentioned showing up on scene in your job, of being physically prepared. I mean, that's on everybody.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get mentally and emotionally prepared for challenges, family challenges, health challenges, work challenges? You talk about mental toughness in what you
Yes.
do and in your speaking career.
Right.
So I want to touch on mental toughness in particular, but all that beyond the physical, which is obvious. How do you
Right.
stay mentally and emotionally ready?
I do hard things. Yeah, and it's not always physically hard things. For example, a couple weeks ago, I was to go to a destination. Had no idea. I kind of had a general idea because I've lived around the Indianapolis area for over 20 years now, but I didn't use my GPS. I said, let's figure it out, um, and go from there. So that's a challenge, because I know there's people out there who would go, you are absolutely insane not to use a GPS. Like, you don't know where you're going to end up, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the beauty of it. So you can do small mental hard challenges, like taking a cold shower. Now, for me, taking a cold shower is not hard anymore. I almost have, like, I'm looking forward to the winter where the lines get a little colder. But some people, like, there's a lot of people out there. If you turn it to the cold shower, they're just going to absolutely scream, run away from it. So I encourage those people to, hey, lean into it a little bit more, challenge yourself. So again, it doesn't have to be physically demanding, because that's the whole point, is like a lot of stuff we do mentally hard is that exactly that. It's mental. It's not physical.
Right.
We have it wrapped in our brain that, oh, this is hard. And your brain wants to go, okay, since it's hard, this is danger, so I'm going to stop you,
Right.
and we're not going to continue on this path. And that's where you have to, there's an override switch.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the
now,
survival mechanism that's
right, there's a
hardwired.
survival mechanism. Now, I'm not saying you're jumping out of a perfectly good airplane with no parachute and good luck, but you get, but the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is yeah, your brain from the get-go is there to keep you alive. So but to do hard things, you do have to expand it. And I really ask myself the question too, what if? What if I actually get this done? If you know, if you know, I've kind of been doing the what if game all my life, because I was told when I was a kid I'd be, and this is no disrespect to any profession out there, believe me, the cities would not function without people running the trash trucks. But I was told I'd be no better than a garbage man. I was told I would never be a firefighter. I was told um, I had to fight, I had to go through some challenges just getting the SAR program, and got into the SAR program, uh, graduated, became a SAR swimmer for the U.S. Navy. After that, so all my life, people have kind of underestimated me, and I love it. I love being underestimated. I was cycling for a period of time, where I was actually starting to get really, there's different categories. I wasn't like a Cat 1 cycling, but man, I could time trial, and I was starting to win some events. So, and the cycling coach I had at the time, the first meeting after we set up, it was like, okay, we're going to meet at this point and see how you're doing. Just completely blown away, because again, cycling is very mentally hard. It's physically challenged, but it's more mental. Being on, a seat this size, I've done right across Indiana twice. It's took me about 8 hours. It's 163 miles in one day. The second time I did it, I was actually injured. I should have had no business on the bike, but again, ego, pride. Afterwards, I couldn't walk for 3 weeks, but I got it done because my mind was like, what if you finish this? If you quit this, what kind of example is that showing your kids? When things get hard in life, and that's when things start getting hard, when things get hard in life for me, I go, okay, I've been through worse. Now, what if I just, if even if I make an inch progress, I've made an inch progress. It doesn't matter that 1%, 2%, I've made progress. And yeah, I may get knocked back a little bit, but I'm coming back because I know I can do it. Because again, I'll reach out for help, or whatever I need to do to get the mission completed. That's what I'm going to do. Trust, effort, attitude, mission, like we were taught.
Nice. That's a super powerful question. What if? I love that.
Yeah.
One of the things you touched on earlier, suicide. So you mentioned not only veteran, I think the 22 a day on average that we hear about is unfortunately an outdated low number now. You mentioned a similar issue in other first responders, and I don't know the numbers, but I suspect it's a societal problem, period.
Yeah.
Civilians and first responders,
Yeah.
and military. So what's causing it? What do we do about it?
I wish I had the golden ticket. I wish I had the answer for it, but really it's really going to take the culture to take pride out of it. Like take pride out of like, I can take care of this on my own. You have to address it. You have to say you are strong by reaching out for help. You're not being, again, it's breaking that culture of you're not, you're being a wuss if you talk about it. You have to get that completely, tear that down, tear it out, whatever you need to do, get rid of it, and then replace it with, you are strong. I am strong. The negative, the toxic cognitions that we come up with ourselves is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I have this conversation with people in my gym. I'm like, no, it's not that you're not strong. You are strong. You just got to start here, put the work in, and you're going to be here. And then a year from now, you're going to look back and go, wow, as long as you do the work. But again, it's the effort and the attitude we come with it to help with especially this day, these past 2 years, for I don't care, first responder, medical professional, has just been absolutely insane. The things we've had to deal with, the long hours, the people we've had to treat, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That weighs on it. No human being is designed to handle that much trauma, that much loss. We're just not. And then you expect them just to go home and be okay. When you start seeing people self-isolate, when you start seeing people behavior, like if I went on a binger, that would be completely out of my character, because I barely touch alcohol. For other reasons, I can barely touch alcohol. Can I have a drink responsibly? Absolutely. But I won't. But if you ever saw me go on a binger, please come rescue me, because something deep has gone off the rails.
Yeah,
you have to know that. Again, it's being in your community, knowing where people are. Knowing, because I know my guys. Like, I know Lex well enough. Like, I've trained long hours enough to, like, if he drops his shoulder a certain way, I know exactly which way he's going to move.
Yeah,
I know exactly what he's going to do. So if he does something out of character, it spikes a flag, and that's what we have to look for.
yeah, that's a great point. One question I want to ask you about a perception I have. So I know, unfortunately, too many people who've chosen suicide, several of whom I was very close to. And I think if I think of, if I try to come up with what the common denominator is, or what's common between these three guys,
right?
I believe I'm thinking of three in particular at the moment. I think all three were in a place that was temporary, that they, go back to your cognitions, chose to perceive as permanent, and made a choice based on that.
Yeah.
The perception I wanted to ask you about was, I've seen, I've known of veterans who went out by their own hands. And as we address their death, we want to continue to recognize them as the heroes that they were. And out of respect for that, don't really talk about their death being suicide.
Right.
And so we've, in a way, yes, we've honored their life, but at the same time, we've avoided talking about the end.
Yeah.
Which may do a disservice to helping somebody else down the road.
Right.
Is that a perception? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah. I recently just had a conversation with someone, and they were contemplating suicide, and I was like, "Thank God you've talked to me. Thank God you have talked to me." Okay, I was like, because don't necessarily see the person every day. But yeah, it's something, unfortunately, you see is people who, again, who've gone through it, and we respect for what they were, but we don't talk about, we kind of like, well, we don't want to put this shadow over why they're gone.
Right.
And we have to really step up and address that. We have to lean into it. Like any other conflict in the world, if you're going to take care of it, you got to lean into it. You can't shy away from it. Now, I believe there's a time and place for it. You know, you have to be respectful, but there is a time and place where you got to realize okay, yeah, we got to talk about this. We got to discuss an action plan of how we can help prevent it. I don't have the answers by any means. I'm not a trained psychologist or psychiatrist, but I see it day in, day out with people. Like you can just the anxiety, the amount of people I treat for anxiety is just astronomical. And it may not seem something, it may seem something silly to me but that's their perspective, and that's their world. And again, it's temporary because I go, well, I'm not there to fix them. I'm there to take care of them and get them to the person, hopefully, that can help deal with whatever is going on.
It's their reality at that time.
Right. Yeah, it is reality, and reality perception of that reality is very, very powerful.
I'll give you, let me just share with you, or maybe this lands with somebody in the audience that needs it. This came from my buddy, Trevor, I mentioned earlier, in the Chula Vista Fire Department. And he's going on to do some graduate level training.
Forever.
Yeah, there you go. So he gave me a couple that I thought were really insightful and powerful. And this may even go back to the conversation you had recently. We're on the theme of asking for help or being able to see when help might be offered.
Right.
Straight up asking, are you contemplating suicide?
Correct.
Right. Oftentimes, like we don't want to ask if they're on the edge, right? I'm trying to be sensitive, dance around it, straight up. And he said, a lot of times the data says that you'll get a very honest answer. They want to tell somebody, or they just feel like there's nothing to lose. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yep.
And then the follow-up is, do you have a plan?
Right.
And the more detailed the plan tends to indicate the level of immediacy or seriousness.
Right. So absolutely 100%. Because I've asked that question to people. Are you wanting to hurt yourself? Or are you wanting to end it? And sometimes you have to be very blunt with it, unfortunately.
Right.
In the sense, again, leaning into it. So do you want to kill yourself? Because if you try to fluff it, your message is not going to get through necessarily. They're going to see you as kind of like, like what's your point? What are you trying to? They're going to get frustrated, shut down. So many times I've asked patients, I was like, do you want to kill yourself? Yes or no? It's not a maybe. And then we take the action we need to take.
It goes back to those crucial conversations, having the love to be that honest.
Yeah. And you have to let them know. I believe personally, humbly, you have to let them know hey, this is coming from a place of love, not judgment.
Right.
Because if I didn't care, I wouldn't even be having this conversation with you.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, let's kind of wrap towards what you're doing at the tail end of your fire career and next chapter of your life.
Yeah.
I know you've started out taking this leadership, what you've learned as a servant, as a husband, as a father, and you're taking this out as broadly as you can to other men, organizations, corporate entities. So you do some speaking and coaching through those mechanisms. I want to talk about that, but let me lead into it by asking, how did you know that you wanted to live a life of service and do these kind of jobs that you've done? And what drives you? What has continued to fuel that spirit for 2-3 decades of this type of hard work?
Yeah. Because I just, the simple answer is because I love people. I love, I'll joke around. God, I hate people. People are a real pain in the ass. But Since I was a kid, I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be that person who stepped into that gap and be there for that person. They may necessarily not like me at the time, just because I may be stopping, whatever, or they maybe, fortunately in my job though, a lot of times I am that good guy. I am that person where, wow. And it's not ego. It's not the thing that serves my ego. I love it when I can step in and help, but I do it in such a team environment as well, because it's just not me. Because I got two other dudes with me, or sometimes five other dudes, depending on what's going on, that we're all working to get the same thing done. And that's it. It makes you feel good when you can step into that gap. Service is, it's not about me. It's about taking care of the community. It's taking care, because who else is going to do it?
Right. Fair enough.
And it's, yeah.
One of the things I love about you guys at the fire department is when you get the call.
Yeah.
Like if I need you guys, I know someone's coming by the time, most likely by the time I need it, whether you're responding to a fire or something similar, or whether it's, you're first on scene on something medical, beating the ambulance there.
Right.
And this isn't a knock on police, because I know what the issues are with funding and staffing and all this other kind of stuff. But when I call those guys, I'm not sure anybody's coming in time to prevent catastrophic harm.
Right.
They might just be coming to write the report afterwards and chase down the guy and punish him after the fact.
Right.
And again, that's a whole nother conversation, but I really appreciate the type of service that you're in. The guys are coming, and you really are true heroes.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate, and saying that, being on the fire side, I love the police officer side. I train with the police officers all the time, just because some of the things I do. And it's just, those are amazing human beings. Absolutely 100%. Amazing to be able to step into, it's funny because we'll have a conversation. It's like, well, hell no, I would never get into a fire. The fire scares the shit out of me. And I'm like, well, you're getting shot at. He says, well, at least I kind of see where it's coming from. I'm like, all right, perspective.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that one. I'm not sure. I might rather get get shot at than have to climb that tall ladder that you guys go up and down.
Yeah, that's a fun thing.
It does look pretty cool. So let's just touch on. I know you're starting to have some of these engagements at the corporate level and the personal level as a leadership. I'll call it life expert, really.
Mm-hmm.
What is I guess we had to think about one. What's the why behind that? What kind of value are you able to bring to people and organizations through that role you're playing now?
Right. When I come in fully open, in the sense that way it's going to give I know it's going, even if I touch one person out of the entire group and say, hey, I am good enough, or, okay, I'm not alone. And that's the bigger thing for me, is I want to make sure they're not alone. Like with my sexual assault when I was a kid, I always thought I was alone. Especially, we always hear about women being raped, but when it happens to a man, what was number 4 out of 7? It's just unfathomable.
4 out of 7 what?
Of men being raped when they were younger.
Okay.
So I'm like, you're standing in a group of 20 men, and you think you're the only one, and then you find out you're not.
Right.
That's powerful. And that's what I come into, and I share my story. Depending on the audience, where we're trying to direct it, whether it's on leadership, whether it's on, faith in yourself, et cetera, et cetera. I always drive it towards the audience, and take that into consideration. But my main perspective is I always come in open, and I shock a lot of people because they're not used to that kind of like, wow, I don't even know this guy, and he's telling me all the story. But at the same time, somebody's sitting in that audience going, they're just instantly connecting with that. And that's what I love. I love to be able, in that way, it's still service. To me, it's still serving the community.
Right. Yeah. Knowing you and knowing even more about your story, that is really powerful. I love that, and unique. I love how unique I can see that being as you show up and you're that open and forthright. And you're just, you're hitting the shadows in the room. And
Right.
man, believe me, you'll be touching more than one person. So I'm excited for you, Keith, as a friend and as an asset here in our community, that you're, I know you still have years ahead of you in fire, but that you're ramping into that career as well to touch even and serve even more people. So thank you for all your years of service. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Two questions for you. Where's the best place to get in touch with you, keep up with you and everything you're doing?
Absolutely. Well, currently I'm in talks with I can't talk about it right now, but I am in talks with a entity that wants to bring me on board for several different things and speaking engagements and stuff like that. So more to come on that as that unravels. But to immediately get a hold of me, you could find me on Instagram at Keith Schmidt at 2020 officially. You can find me on TikTok. So all the links that hopefully I've supplied to you.
Yeah, you did.
I'm very
sure
acceptable. So you can direct message me. Obviously, I'm if we get to a point where you want to actually book me, we can talk by phone and we can reach out from there. But I have to protect myself, in the sense that I want real people contacting me, not just bots.
Not just Russian bots.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, no worries. We'll get links up to your points of contact and your content, because it's, you're out there as always leading from the front and inspiring me and inspiring others. So I appreciate that you do that, and you've got those channels to do that. The one other question I had for you is,
Yes,
what's next? Just from what's the next big challenge that's out there for you?
This is this is the
like
next
wide
big
open.
challenge for me, is to getting out in the public venues, into really stepping into the spotlight. Because for many years I've gone, okay, I don't want to be in the spotlight. I don't want to, I'm not that. But I look at it as like, how selfish are you if you don't do this? If you don't share your story, if you don't write a book, how selfish are you? Because you're not helping anyone. Because there's another boy out there who's dealt with the exact same thing, unfortunately, that I had to go through. And he may feel alone, again, on that island, shutting down, thinking there's no help for me.
I love that you're doing that, man. I'm excited about it on so many levels.
Thank you.
It kind of goes back to your what if question.
Yeah.
And, I'll give you one to think about as well. As a lot of times I think when we hesitate to step out into that spotlight, the three classic fears are the fear of ridicule and criticism, the fear of failure, and really often most powerfully is the fear of success.
Yeah. That has crossed my mind. It's not so much the fear of failure but when I start getting into that realm of like, I have to be able to make sure I have systems in place to keep me in check, physically, mentally, emotionally. I need to make sure and I'm working on getting those in place through help from people who've done this before. Right. So people who I respect.
I'm glad you're doing that. I will always keep you in check. So
I know
if you
you
go off
will.
the rails, you can expect a call or a message from me. And the other thing I'm going to make sure we get out with this episode is you sent me some great pictures of you and the family.
Oh,
And
yes.
those will go out. But I got some awesome pictures you've sent me from back at like Murph and some other stuff you're doing,
Oh,
where
yeah.
you were kind enough to wear the hat I sent you.
It was
And
my
then,
honor to wear that.
oh man, they're great pictures. So I'm gonna get
Okay.
those out as
Yeah.
well of you just out there being a savage. So Keith Schmidt, savage servant, honor man, and man of honor. Thank you for taking your time, your first podcast, to come here and chat with me and taking some time on your Friday afternoon, man. I appreciate you so much. I love you, brother.
I love you, brother. And thank you so much.
All right. Thank you again to my buddy Keith Schmidt. He truly is a man of honor, honor man of our class. Savage servant. He's been doing it for a long time for the community, for his friends, for his family. I hope you enjoyed meeting Keith. This is his first podcast ever. He'll be doing many more, I'm sure. And he's out there doing these corporate and other speaking events that he mentioned as well. So if you have any interest in getting in touch with Keith around that type of thing, or just want to connect with him, I will give you links. He's a little cautious, as he mentioned, about his social media. So reach out to me if you need to. I can always connect you with Keith. But a lot of takeaways from that one. I hope you got something. I'd love to hear what you did. Some of my notes here, really understanding what drives somebody who stays so busy and stays focused on that mission of service. Follow him on Instagram. He's got some crazy workouts he does, both with his CrossFit box and stuff he goes out and does on his own, just to go out and suffer and grow in the adversity. And what if, what a powerful question we came across in today's episode. What if I did that? What if I didn't do that? What if I could? So powerful stuff from Keith Schmidt. Look forward to seeing more from him, and appreciate you guys as always. Super appreciate your trust and your time to be here and to experience the kind of conversations like we just had with Keith Schmidt. All right. Savage Schmidt would have nothing other than for you to get out there and get after it right now, because I know he is, and that's what I'm about to go do as well. Get after it, guys. We'll see you next week.